During the last 3 weeks, I have been traveling and I have tried to restrict myself to 3 devices only. One of them is a smartphone as well, and it's the Bigme Hibreak, a smartphone in the form of an e-ink reader, and I have been also using the Onyx Boox Palma, the first generation. These 2 devices are quite similar with respect to the functionality of e-ink readers, and then I have complemented the whole thing with my Pixel Pro Fold, the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, which is an entire office in a very small form factor and far away from a distraction-free device. I'm now going to compare these 2 small little e-readers, how they stack up against each other, and what my use case scenario for both of them are, and if there is maybe some recommendation for you. Let's get into it. So here are these 2 devices in a direct comparison from the back side, here close to each other, and you see that the Onyx Boox Palma, I have the white version, and on the right side here is the Bigme Hibreak. They are comparable in the size, but the Onyx Boox Palma is a little bit larger. Now also, if you compare it that way and put them above each other, you will see that the Onyx device is a little bit bigger, wider and a little bit taller, but comparing the thickness, it's approximately the same. Now, from the build quality perspective, both devices are fully plastic. So there is no glass on the backside, there is no metal. You could say a little bit cheap from the quality point of view, but very, very convenient from my personal point of view, because I have always had troubles. If you, for example, compare this with my Google Pixel 9 Pro Fold, you see that I have put on a cover, and they're particularly difficult to have these covers on these flip devices, because there are 2 parts of it, and the part here, the upper part, is only covering the sides, and here at on the side of the grease, you have to stick it. So there is some gluing layer underneath to keep this little plastic in place. On the back side, you can normally remove this, as with all smartphones, and then you have here the glass back side of the Pixel design here in white and the metal part. So that is very standard, but on overall there is a big discussion. Some people prefer to put specific covers on their devices to protect them, but on the other hand, the whole design aspect, the whole color choices that you have, for example, with iPhones, is in a way, covered by everything you put on it. So that is something to consider. And the glass backside is very slippery. Here this covers the backside of the device, and the plastic is much more grippy. But it adds certain bulk to the entire phone. Now, having these 2 devices, the plastic backside actually makes them fully usable without any cover at all. And that is a major advantage. Of course, there are covers for the Onyx Boox Palma, and I think there are also some for this device, but you actually don't need them. So I'm not really a fan of these fancy designs with a lot of glass, because they make all these devices so fragile. And in this case, you can really take the devices as they are. Now, turning to the front, you see the Onyx Boox Palma. I've decided to go for the white version because there is a little bit physics behind. I use these devices mainly for outdoor reading. So in bright sunlight, you do really see a difference between a device which is black and a device in full white color. Because, for example, if you put them on a table like this and you have bright sunshine, then these devices heat up much less than a black device, because black is absorbing the rays of the sun, and it gets much hotter than this device. If you compare now the front side, you see that there is much less contrast because of the white or bright, it's gray actually, bezel and the layer, the e-ink layer inside. So that is also something to consider. For some, the bezel may be maybe a surrounding that you like, but overall I think this is more pleasing to the eye and less straining when you read for a longer time, because this is something where you don't have a sharp contrast between inside and outside, between bezel and the e-ink layer. Now, those devices are also different because this is black and white only in 300 ppi, and this one is a color e-ink device based on the Kaleido 3 technology. That means the text, the black and white text is fine, but with the color, the RGB layer reduces the resolution of the color information to 92 ppi, so less than 100. So you see definitely that colors are not as sharp as on the Onyx Boox Palma. There is also one significant difference, and this is the specific GPU or additional engine in the BSR technology of this Onyx Boox device, which should increase the performance of the e-ink screen. However, spoiler alert, I can tell you that the scrolling speed and the reaction of the screen of the Hibreak, of the Bigme Hibreak smartphone, is really quite good and absolutely usable. So this should not be a discerning factor for you. Okay, so I've turned on the devices now, and what you are going to see here is two versions, the versions of the same application and the same content open at the same time. It's both the medium reader application, because I like to read on the medium platform, and on the left side you see this in black and white, and you also see on the right side the same open document in color. But what you can see here as well is the difference in brightness and also maybe the difference in color, but because of the Kaleido 3 technology, it's not very bright. Now let's start the scrolling, and you see honestly that the scrolling is absolutely fine on both devices. So both devices are absolutely okay if you use them for reading. I don't see here a significant advantage of the Onyx Boox Palma compared with the Bigme Hibreak. It has a sort of a yellowish halo around in the outer part of the screen, which you can see maybe here best. And it is something I am a little bit surprised to see after using this device for a longer time. Maybe it's some dirt which gets here into this on the side between the bezel and the edges of the cover, but it's noticeable and it doesn't bother me too much, but it's something you don't see here. You also see that the distance between the outer surface, the glass layer, and the e-ink layer is at least 1 millimeter, or even maybe a little bit larger, but you see the shadow here, and on the Bigme Hibreak it seems to be closer to the surface. So that is something you have to have in mind as well if this bothers you. What you also see is in standard settings that because this device is a little bit wider, you have a longer line of text to read in the standard settings. It's the same app, it's the same text, and you see the first sentence here ends with the word would, but here you have part of the next word hyphenated, okay, but it's definitely a little bit wider and maybe a more pleasant reading experience for you, because this is really very, very narrow. So this is the first thing, and you see again I will do a little bit of scrolling here for you to show you the difference. Honestly, I feel that these two devices are really comparable. And of course, you have here, at least in the Onyx device, but also on the Bigme Hibreak, a couple of settings where you can change the color intensity, you can change the contrast. But since I use both devices for text reading, I prefer to have a higher contrast. Here the text is finer. You see that it's less bold and not as black as on this device, but this is simply because the resolution is different and the contrast here on this device is a little bit higher because of the darker background of the screen. Now let's compare the settings, and you can here, as on all these devices, for example, add a little bit of background light, or actually it's a front light. It comes from the side of the panel, and you can do this here as well. And you see in the standard settings, at least in the standard settings here, if you do this, then you definitely see that, okay, this is very bright. It's not necessary here, but you see the difference. And this is more on the cold side of the color spectrum. This is more warm yellowish. This Bigme device has only standard lighting in the background, whereas on the Onyx Boox Palma, you can also add this yellow light and warm light and make it almost yellow, which may be an advantage for reading at night when you don't want a lot of blue light happening. So that's something to consider. You can also completely turn it off here. So what you see here on the left side, you can increase the brightness of the screen significantly, and it does really give you a better readability. But from my perspective, because these are classical outdoor devices, I turn it off and I make this comparison in the settings without any lighting on, because that's more or less where e-ink technology shines and what e-ink technology is made for. Now I'm here in the Google Play Store, and you see also the same picture because it's exactly the same time. This is really synchronized, of course, the same presentation. The proposals are interestingly different, but when you scroll here, and for example, you do this on both devices, I have the feeling that the Onyx device is slightly more reactive. But still on the Bigme Hibreak, it's absolutely usable. I mean, you have to understand that these Onyx Boox devices, also the small one, this particular smartphone-shaped e-reader, also includes the BSR technology. This is Boox Super Refresh, and this is a particular, like a GPU, which increases the reactivity and the frequency of updates on an e-ink screen. This is something which is not present in the Bigme Hibreak, but still they managed to get a decent speed also in scrolling. So for a small comparison test, I would like to install the Opera browser. I'm not using the Opera browser on a regular basis, even if I think it's a good application on all the platforms, but I synchronize my devices with a Chromebook as well, and obviously on Chromebook you have to use Google Chrome. But let's see now how these two devices perform, and it's not about screen performance, it's about performance of the Wi-Fi, performance of the CPU, and performance of the internal storage. Let's see how this works. You see this is loading faster, this is a little bit slower. Okay, now it's installing already on the Onyx Boox device. And here it's still waiting. I mean, let's see. And this is now real time. I'm not going to interrupt this. This is done. And on the right side, the Bigme Hibreak, it's still working on it. So maybe in a couple of seconds we have the installation completed here as well. Yes, Google Play Protect checks the installation and it's done. So you see, this device is, and this is also a real world experience I have found in the last 3 weeks when I was away and was using these devices on a regular basis. the Onyx Boox device is significantly faster and snappier in day-to-day performance. Only when comparing the screens, it is approximately comparable. But other than that, for example, when I did not use these devices before for a couple of weeks, I had over 100 apps to install, and this took, I don't know, 10 minutes longer to install and update all these apps than on the Onyx Boox Palma. There is one thing to be mentioned as well, and you see it here when I hold it in an angle that you see the light from the window. There is a little bit of reflection, but it's a matte screen and it's quite okay regarding sunlight or light reflections. It's decently readable. The same is actually true for the Bigme Hibreak. However, and I would say it's also the same level of grain, what is this called? Granularity of the matte layer. So you see approximately the same diffusion on both devices. But on this one, it is actually a glossy screen. And they ship this device with an included screen protector, which you may see here that there are already a little bit of scratches. I don't know if you can see it. Yes, I think that way you can see it properly. And you have to attach it yourself. And it is not one of those hard glass protectors. It is really just a thin foil. So you see all of the scratches. If you hold it here, you see here a little bit of bubbles, and you have to attach the screen protector yourself. And that is also a difference between these two devices, because this is something you can use out of the box. And I really recommend to use it without any cover, because it has this grippy plastic backside, but it is a decent quality, so don't worry about that. Now on this device, it also has a little bit of a structure, but it's less rounded here, and both are very good and easy to hold in your hands. Now there's one thing to mention as well. There are cameras on both devices. Here, of course, you only see it in black and white. Here you see it in color. But again, in Kaleido 3 color. So it is definitely not something which you would like to use as a smartphone camera. And both of these cameras have very, very weak quality compared to modern smartphone cameras. So I would say it's like one of the first generation of smartphone cameras like 10, 15 years ago. It's not more. Furthermore, this camera is inside a plastic layer, and it's a little bit I don't know if you can see that. It's a little bit coming out, like 0.5 millimeter maybe. But on this one, you have a camera bump, which is much, much smaller than on modern smartphones. But it's something you can see, and you would see on a table. So you have a certain wobble when you put the smartphone on a surface. Again, because it's not a very risky and high quality camera, I would not bother putting it on any table and on any surface and be happy without any protector and any cover. Coming to one particular point, which is a lack of this device, and this is the reactivity of the screen is a little bit challenging from time to time, which means I have enabled these Android buttons on the bottom. I don't need this here, because in fact, usually it is quite fast to go back to the applications. For example, I've here also installed Google Maps, and I can use Google Maps also for navigation purposes. But here on this device, sometimes it's not very reactive to use the gestures, and therefore I have decided to enable these buttons. I did not do it on the Onyx Boox Palma because it was not necessary. There is also, on both devices, there is a button on the left side, and this button does what it is supposed to do. It does give you a full screen refresh, but you see sometimes on the Bigme Hibreak, it's not acting as expected. For some reason, there is no... okay, now it works. And here it is working immediately. Okay, it's a long press. Good. But that's a feature you get on both devices, and it makes absolutely sense. And this is a functionality which, by the way, I am really missing on the Remarkable tablets, because they are deciding for you when they are going to do a full screen refresh. And as we have seen in some previous video, that is not always working as expected. Coming back to this is a smartphone, and you would expect from a modern smartphone to have two features which are absolutely missing on this device, and this is a fingerprint reader or screen or face recognition. I wouldn't expect face recognition on such a cheap device, but I would expect a fingerprint reader. This is not available. So if you turn off this device, this is the standard home screen, and you get a calendar even with some color highlighting of the actual day. And this is maybe not bad, but when you enable the phone, now I have enabled this, and I've typed in my PIN. Of course, I'm not showing you. And again, you are back to the home screen. So this is something to consider on both devices. What is also not available on this particular device, you wouldn't miss it on an e-reader, which is just a companion to read, but you would miss it on a smartphone, is the NFC feature. So if you are using your smartphone for mobile payment, you can of course pair this with a smartwatch and use the smartwatch like a Garmin, like also a Google Watch or any other Android Wear device, of course. But this does not allow you to use any mobile payment because it does not include an NFC chip. One more feature which is missing in the Bigme Hibreak, which is crucial for me, is Android Auto. So if you want to pair it with your car and use it for navigation, it does not work. You can of course use Google Maps, and you can use it for navigation as a standalone device. It has a GPS chip, and this works relatively well, but you cannot pair it with your car. You cannot do this either on the Onyx Boox Palma, but on the other hand, you wouldn't expect it from an e-reader. So there is also a difference which should be taken into account. So here you see now a comparison of these two devices playing YouTube videos. Now, this is definitely not the main use case for such a device, but you can see, of course, that the quality of YouTube videos on both devices is absolutely sufficient to watch a video for information purposes. Anyway, it's mostly about the story and what the YouTuber is telling. So I would say if you're on the go and if you are in bright sunlight, then using this device for watching one or the other YouTube video is maybe absolutely okay. Of course, I wouldn't say that it's the ideal device for watching Netflix or anything like that, but it's a decent device, and if you're in bright sunshine, I have used these devices to watch video, but honestly, I still prefer, even if it's in black and white, because the quality and the rendering is better from my perspective, and I was really preferring to watch it on black and white, especially in bright sunlight. There you have it. These two devices, namely the Bigme Hibreak, is a smartphone that you can use for a limited amount of time or for limited use cases, but it lacks a couple of important features that we are used to in our modern smartphone world, namely a biometric security feature like a fingerprint reader or face unlock or something like that. And this may also limit some of the applications that you can run on it. It depends on the application and how they check the security features. Then it does lack the NFC compartment and the NFC sensor. So any sort of mobile payment is not possible on this device. And this is a very limiting factor for myself. If you're not going to use it for mobile payment and you say this is not important for you, then maybe the Bigme Hibreak is a perfect phone for you. It has the advantage of being very simplistic, very durable, and it's actually perfectly readable in direct sunlight, so this makes it a perfect summer, maybe a vacation phone. On the other hand, the Onyx Boox Palma is one of the best, if not the best, pocketable, small, tiny e-readers. And I do use it in particular to read text without any colors, just pure text. For example, all the apps that are in the Android ecosystem, like Substack, like Medium, like blogs, newspaper subscriptions, etc. This is the device to go because it does have Android as a base system. Now, the upgraded version that is available now from Onyx features a fingerprint reader, but it's still not a full-fledged smartphone, which is a huge limitation for me. I would have bought this immediately if it was a full-fledged smartphone, but now I'm not going to upgrade. It does not make any sense for me. I hope this was useful for you. And one announcement from my side, I'm approaching the 100 days period that Remarkable is giving to new purchases of the Remarkable Paper Pro, and mine was delivered beginning of September. Now the 100 days period is over by the end of this week, and I will come up with a full final verdict on this device in my upcoming video, and which may also help you to make a decision if any potential Black Friday offering is for you or not. Stay tuned and see you soon in my next video.